Good morning and welcome to our next session in a series of webinars on Church360 members. Today's webinar is focused around events and tracking attendance. My name is Tim Burke and I'll be your instructor today. I'm a software support technician here at Concordia Technology. Been here about a little over 5 years. My contact information is there displayed on your screen, my email address, as well as my phone number. Couple notes. First of all phones and microphones have been muted, so you won't be able to talk with me over this webinar, but I would like you to type any questions that you have into the questions window that you have on your side of the interface. So if anything comes to mind as we're going through the material today, you can go ahead and post those questions. If I happen to see it, I may go ahead and address that question during the presentation, but with all of the activity going on in a webinar, sometimes I miss those. But I'll do my best at answering those questions, and I will answer all the questions that are input at the end of the class, so we'll review those questions. But here helping me today is my manager, Rod Kiles. He's the manager of the support department at Concordia Technology Solutions. His contact information is there displayed on your screen, his email, as well as his direct phone number. Thank you, Rod. And Rod will also be reviewing those questions as they come through. If he has time to address them during the presentation, he'll also might be answering your question as well. All right, so let's talk about the class agenda today. First of all, we're going to have an overview of the topics that we'll cover. Then we'll drop into a roughly around a 45-minute session of discussion. Then we'll take a 5-minute intermission or break just to stretch our legs, and then we'll come back into the discussion period, finish off the training. We'll then have a short quiz just covering some of the information covered today, and then we'll look at any questions in the Q&A session at the end. So let's go ahead and drop into our overview of topics. So today, we'll be covering calendars. We need to have there is a collection of calendars in Church360 members, and we'll talk about adding additional calendars to that list, as well as editing them. We'll also talk about the events view and adding and editing events. And then we'll get into recording attendance, and then finish it off with the attendance detailed report. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so they're displayed on your screen. I'm just about ready to sign into our demo church, Concordia Church. We sign into the program and we're here in People Individuals View. We'll kind of pick up and maybe build upon some of the things we learned in yesterday's webinar session on the significant life events, data management, search and filter. We'll use some of those search and filter things that we learned yesterday in today's session as well. So in thinking of events and attendance, before we can even talk about tracking attendance, we first have to have some events in place, because those events are the things that we track attendance for. And even before we talk about events, each event that we create has to be on a calendar. So let's begin there with calendars. Our calendar collection we'll find in the upper right corner under the settings icon, the gear. And under collections here, the first item listed is calendars. So in this calendars collection that you'll have, there are many different types of calendars here. We'll see a lot of anniversary calendars, things like baptisms, anniversary of baptisms, birthdays, confirmation anniversaries, deaths would be considered another anniversary calendar, as well as wedding anniversaries. Now these 5 calendars that I've just named, all are calendars that are created from the data that's in your database already. It's picking up on any baptism dates, birthdays, confirmations, deaths, and weddings, etc. So those are there by default in Church360 members, and that comes from the data that you have. Another type of calendar that's there by default is the Pastoral Visits Calendar. And so we touched on that a little bit in yesterday's webinar, but any pastoral visits that you schedule or any data that you input from a previous pastoral visit, that would show up here in your calendar as well. Then there are standard calendars, things like the education calendar, as well as the fellowship calendar and the worship calendar are all built in by default. And the worship calendar is where we'll probably spend a lot of our time today, just creating events for worship. And then there's also some Unite calendars that are possibly here as well. Calendars that are created in Church360 Unite, our website builder product, will also appear here in Church360 members and vice versa. So these calendars that you see listed here will also appear in Church360 Unite if you happen to have that product. All right, let's go ahead, and I'd like to show you just how to create additional calendars. We can go ahead and just type in a name for a communion calendar here, and then we can also choose to categorize some of the calendars. If you have areas of ministry that you want to put some calendars together, you might choose a similar color. I'm just going to go ahead and keep the green color, and we'll go ahead and click the add button here on the right. The communion calendar will show up here at the top since that's the one I just created, but once I refresh the screen, it will be sorted alphabetically in the list. I do want to create a couple other ones here. We'll create a VBS calendar. Let me go ahead and capitalize that. And then maybe for today here, I'm going to mimic one of the other calendars that's there, the worship, and I'm going to put in parentheses here, Tim's demo. We'll go ahead and add that calendar, and then also, let's see, well, I'll probably just keep it with that. So let's go ahead and refresh the screen so that everything sorts alphabetically. And so there are the calendars that we created. I created a VBS calendar. It's listed there, as well as a communion calendar. And then the worship Tim's demo calendar here, just to mimic this worship calendar that's already in place. I'll use this during the demonstration today. So here in the list, in the left column, we see the name of the calendar. You can go ahead and at any point in time and change the name of anyone. If I wanted to edit the VBS calendar name, I could type in additional content in the label and then click save, and it changes that label. We can also change the color of any calendar at any point in time, and I'll show you how color plays into it in just a moment when we go to the events view. And then here in the third column, we'll show you how many events are connected with that particular calendar in the current month that we're in. So in June, there are some things here. There are 11 baptisms, 25 birthdays in the month of June, etc. And if we would click on this little button that forms as I'm hovering over that number, it turns a teal background. That just is a clue to you that this is a shortcut. So if I was to click on this number 11 here for baptisms, it would take us to the events view and show us the events calendar for June with the filter of baptisms already selected, and it would show us those 11 individuals. So you can quickly then see the information just from this starting point here in the collection of calendars. Over on the far right is our universal delete button, a circle with a minus. When you hover over it, you'll see it turns more of a distinct red color, and you can just click on that to delete a calendar. Let's go ahead down to VBS here and delete that calendar. You'll see that you will get a confirmation button here to confirm that you do want to delete it, so that you're not accidentally clicking something and it's suddenly gone. So there is the confirmation. We'll remove that calendar and VBS is gone. There's also the option here to export this list of calendars to Excel or a CSV file. I'll go ahead and just do a quick calendar to my desktop. We'll take a look at what exports here. And so what exports in this option here to download is the name of the calendar, and then you will see if it's required, if it's a calendar that's required by members, true, or if it's required by Unite. So in this case, really there's no calendar that I have in the list that's connected with Unite, so that's fine. And then you'll see some of these calendars that I created today as custom calendars. They aren't required by members, so I would be able to delete them as well. Tim's demo down here, as well as the communion. Somewhere along the line, somebody created a business planning. So those I can create, but those that are required by members, you will not be able to delete those. All right, and then there is also a print option here in the upper right corner. If we click print, then you'd get just a portrait size paper showing you how many events for this month are appearing in those particular areas of ministry where you've created a calendar. Close the preview. So that's pretty much it for calendars. Let's go ahead then and move on to our next step, events, and talk about the events view. So here in the month of June, let's talk about the navigation here first of all. In the upper left corner, we've got the heading events. The new button is right next to it. That's what we'll use to create additional events to put on any one of those calendars that we have in our collection. The current month that's being displayed is June, but we can navigate to a month in history just by clicking on the back button, as well as moving forward in time by clicking on the little arrow that bracket that's pointing to the right, and we can go to August and September. But I can also return right back to the current month by clicking on the circle. And I click on that, then it takes us back to June, and it also puts a little box around the current day, the 10th. Let me go ahead then and direct you to the right side of the screen here. We've got a download option, which we'll talk about in a minute, and print and save report. But I want to jump down to this month and week view, as well as the calendar listing here. So let's look at this calendar button. This will be showing us those calendars that area under settings that we just came from. This is our collection of calendars that we can select from. I've got the communion calendar that I created, as well as the worship Tim's demo calendar that has no events associated with it yet because we haven't created anything. But let's go ahead and add some of the baptisms here to the calendar, birthdays, confirmations. We'll go ahead and add some wedding anniversaries. Let me take off pastoral visits for the moment. So here we've got just those anniversary calendars that I talked about, where it's pulling data from your database. And so you can see here in the monthly view that the different colors of the different calendars that we have. You can see here baptisms are blue, birthdays are red, and that was all selected here in that calendar listing. You'll see the blue color that we have for baptisms, red for birthdays, confirmation anniversaries are in purple. So that's the connection there. I could change any one of these colors at any point in time, but now you get the connection there between colors. It really draws your attention to see baptisms in blue. You can go to the specific days that you're seeing when baptisms, anniversaries of baptisms were done. And then you'll also notice here that on the 10th, our current date, that everything on the 10th and following the 10th are in more of a dynamic color, robust color there, but everything that's happened in history is clouded or shaded. And that is on purpose. That is just to show you what's coming up in ahead of time in your calendar. If you hold your cursor over any of these past events from previous days, you'll still be able then to read what is on that particular event. But for the most part, those are shaded because that's past history. If we go to the month of July, all of the colors are there in their full color. If we went back to May, everything is shaded, but you could still see there, and you can kind of see through the shaded area as well. But that's all on purpose. All right, let's go ahead then from choosing calendars. You can have and choose any multiple calendars that you want or any single calendar. If you just wanted birthdays to see when the church office might want to send out cards, maybe you send out cards on wedding anniversaries as well, then you get an idea of what you'll need to do from week to week in respect to that. But besides the monthly view of this calendar, we can also go to a weekly agenda view. And so here, we're in the current week of June 10th. We're here on Thursday. We can see in this weekly agenda view that Shirley Alexander's birthday is today, as well as Mila Hunter's and Nyla Robertson's tomorrow on June 11th. We could still add any other calendars that we would like and put baptisms on there, and they will be added to this weekly agenda view. Another nice thing about the weekly agenda is, let's go ahead and remove some of these options. If you happen to use the pastoral visits option and schedule pastoral visits, we would see that the one visit that we created in yesterday's session does appear. And then I've also added a few pastoral visit scheduled sessions next week. So this would show you that on Monday there are 2 pastoral visits on the schedule, as well as Wednesday and Friday. This could then be printed, and that weekly agenda view could then be given to the pastor and put in his mailbox in the church office. You could also, in that same view, you could add other areas of ministry. If you had business planning, like a finance meeting or something, you could add that as well. You know, anything that might be on the pastor's schedule, even worship services and things, those could all be added as layers to this weekly agenda view and then printed off. All right, let's go ahead and let's see. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and add some of the birthdays again and take off my pastoral visits. So the options in the upper right corner, the download option and the print option. Let's first talk about the print option. This print option is using the print function in the internet browser. So your calendar is going to be presented this way. You'll notice in the upper right corner that there is the portrait and landscape option. For something like a calendar, I would suggest you go landscape. And then you can just right click on the screen, choose print. And you would see something like this. So then you might have to change the scaling sometimes if you want to try to fit more of the calendar in the window. And you do need to keep in mind that some of the days where there are many birthdays or other events on your monthly calendar, it might extend the length of that particular week because of the content that is in that week. Where you can see down here in the week of the 27th and 28th, kind of where my cursor is hovering over, there's just single birthdays through that week. And so that week is not very tall. And so sometimes if you got a lot of content on your calendar and it skews the way it looks, you might want to check the calendars that you've selected, see if you can maybe keep our print one separately so that it prints in a better formatting from this internet browser print function. But one other option that you do have in cases like that, let's say we did have maybe more baptisms added as well, besides just printing it here in your browser, we could also use the download option, which gives you the ability to send that to a Microsoft Word document. I actually like the formatting of this export option more than the print option in the browser. Let's give you an example of what that looks like. So bringing that one over to the screen here. I'll maximize it here. So that's presented to you in a little bit more of a familiar calendar appearance, where the days from the prior month are shaded at the top and the days from the future month are shaded at the bottom. And I think this is just a little bit more of a presentable option and formatted accordingly. So keep in mind that that is available as well. Then here under download in your events view, let's go ahead and remove those, and let's talk about adding and editing events. And I'm going to select the worship calendar that I created for today's demo. It's going to mimic what is in the worship calendar here. It's just we've got some other events tied to that from previous training. So I kind of want to have a clear slate here to work with. All right, so in the, let's just go back to the month. Well, let's actually go back to January 1st. I'm going to the month of January to start a series of worship events on Sundays to demonstrate how to create events, multiple events in a series. So the first thing we can do is we can click the new button here to create an event. And we can give the event a name here, just text entry. And every event that you create needs to be added to a calendar. We'll do that here in a moment. And we can also add as an option a location in your church building if that is needed. But the part that I wanted to point out right here in the beginning is the date that's filled in. Right now, it uses just the current date that's on your system, June 10th, 2021. So if I wanted to start a series of events and kind of backdate it, or even start a series that's going to begin in a couple weeks, I would click in the date field and select that particular date. So if I wanted to kind of go backwards in time and start a series of worship events on January 3rd, I would do that to select that day. Now I'll show you another option that just kind of cuts corners a little bit and does that for you. And this is the way that I'll normally create events in the calendar, but still clicking the new button is a good way to do it as well. But if you get to the starting date of the series of events on the events view, again, we're back here in January of 2021, I can click on the 3rd of January and that same window opens up. But you'll see that it populates with my starting date already. I don't have to click in the date field and move that around. I can just go directly to my starting date, even if it was a Wednesday service and I'm going to, or a Thursday night business meeting, I can go to the first Thursday in the month of January here on the 7th, click on that date, and it gives me January 7th to put my board meeting. So that's the method I use. I think it saves a little time of having to pick a date. So we'll go to the 3rd. Now I'll start out with a worship service, and I'm going to go ahead and say that it is with communion. I'm going to add it to a calendar. And I know that I have a couple worship calendars. One's got Tim's demo. That's the one I'm going to select for today. Then this location might be in the sanctuary. And the location is just an option. I mean, the sanctuary would be obvious, but let's say you're creating an event for maybe a new members class, and it might be in room 101 or room 201 in the building on the 2nd floor. So you'd want to specify the location of that particular event on the calendar. And that will show up when you hover over the event in the calendar view. All right, then we come down to all day. Event is at all day, then we would check the box and it removes the hour fields. But this isn't all day. This is going to be our 8 o'clock service. And you'll see that the orange box is over the area that you're filling in. I just use the tab key to move on to the next section. So right now it's set to PM. I'll just type in a letter A and that changes it to AM for me. Most of the time the events will create with just by default, we'll project it out 1 hour. And so that's what I'll keep for this particular event. Now, if this is just a one-time event, I wouldn't check the box to repeat. I can add details about this event if I'd like and just text entry in this section. I know that I do want to take attendance for this service, so I'd check the box to take attendance. Communion is served because I've created a worship with communion, and I do want to take an offering. Now these 3 boxes here at the bottom are very important. This will determine whether this check mark here for attendance taken will determine if this event is even going to show up in our attendance view when we're adding attendance to events. So you do want to check that box if that's the case. If communion is served, you do want to check that box as well, because a chalice will appear in attendance entry and we'll make use of that chalice in a moment. And then 2, if there's an offering that's going to be taken, then in a later training, when we talk about tracking offerings, you'll be able to associate a batch of offerings with this event only because you have a check mark in this box. If you don't have a check mark there, then you won't be able to associate a batch of offerings with this event. So I would highly recommend that you watch those 3 check boxes very carefully. We'll go ahead and add this event, and you'll see that it's entered here just one particular time on January 3rd. Now, obviously, we don't want to have to create an event for every single Sunday, one at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this event here in a moment. I do want to point out that in the bubble that appears as I'm hovering over the event, you do see the calendar that it's connected to, the time, and then now we do see that location of sanctuary. So any locations that you do enter in will show up in this little bubble window as you hover over events. But I want to edit this event. We're going to go ahead and click on the event again, and that will just open up those same edit fields that we used to create the event. And now this is where I want to make a repeating schedule for this event. I want to edit this event. I'm going to click the box that this repeats. Now when I click that, what opens up by default is that this event would repeat every single week, and I could then choose a date of the week that it repeats on. I can choose multiple dates. If I'd have a worship event at the same time, 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning, and it happened on Wednesday as well, I can click on those 2 dates and it would repeat then every single week, Sunday and Wednesday. If I don't want a date that's shaded, you just click on it again. It's an on and off switch, flips back and forth between those 2 settings. So we could say that we want this repeated every single week. You can choose other options like every 3rd week, every 4th week, and it would then go through your total year, 52 weeks of the year, and do every 3rd one, things like that. You can also then choose whether it might not be a schedule where you want to repeat it necessarily on a particular day of the week, but it might be by month. And so here, if we choose the month option, we want this to repeat every single month. That's what I want to do in this case, because with the month option, I can then choose a day of the month. I could say any date between 1 and the 31st if it's a month that has 31 days, or I might just choose the last day of the month. There's also a first day of the month, and that last is there just because some weeks have 30, or some months have 30 days, some at 31. So you just might want to designate it just happens on the last day, no matter what that particular date is. The other option that we have besides individual days of the month by number, we can also choose the, in a sense, the week that we want this to repeat on. So since we're going to have communion on the first and the third week of every month, as well as if there is a fifth week, we want to include it there in my example today. I'm going to choose the first Sunday of the month. And now I want to add a third Sunday of the month, so I click the plus sign. It then gives me another option here where I can then choose the third Sunday of the month. One more time, click the fifth Sunday, and it will only appear if there is a fifth Sunday. If there aren't any, if the month doesn't have a fifth Sunday, then it won't be scheduled a third time in that month. It will only appear when there is a fifth Sunday in the month. So that's what I want in my schedule. If this schedule was only going to last for a particular number of weeks, I could end the schedule then. If it starts on January 3rd, I could end it. Right now, I can't click into this ending date field, but once I do put a check mark there, now I can click into it. A pop-up calendar appears, and I can end an event schedule after a certain number of weeks. Where that comes into play is like if you're creating Lenten services or Advent services and they only happen for a number of weeks, you can then start it on one Wednesday and end it 6 weeks later, 4 weeks later on the next, that Wednesday that's 6 weeks later. In this case, I don't want this to end. Just want to have this schedule go out indefinitely. All of my other settings here are good. I'm still just wanting to take attendance, communion, and offerings. So I click save. And now you'll see that this schedule now has been updated to show every first and third. Let's see, let's get to the current month of June. There we go. So the 20th, and then here we show it here on the 4th. This is actually in July. But now this is an every other week schedule that shows communion. So let's go back to January here. Now I want to create a worship service without communion on the in-between weeks. So I'm going to click on the 10th here in this case, because that's when I want the series to start. Right away, I see my January 10th date show up. I'm going to give this event a name, worship. And I don't have to put with communion in this case because it's not including communion. We're going to add it to the worship calendar. So I type in WOR and it already filters the list for me. And I'm going to select Tim's demo. Again, this is in the sanctuary. I didn't spell that right. All right, there we go. And it's not an all-day event. So again, I click here in the hour position and it highlights the 3. I can change that to an 8. Tab over, just type in 10, that zeroes that out. Tab over again, put A for AM. And then I do want this to repeat. And once again, we're going to choose the every single month option for this to choose the in-between weeks. I should point out here, besides month, there's also a year. So you might have a event that happens every single year, every other year, every third year, every fourth year. So there's just a whole lot of options here. But I mainly wanted to show the difference. You'll most likely be using either every single week on a particular day of the week or every single month. This one will probably be used quite a bit every single month. Here I can select for my non-communion Sunday, the second Sunday of the month, as well as the fourth Sunday. Oh, let's make sure we select Sunday. And in this case, I do want to take attendance. Communion won't be served on these in-between weeks, so I won't check that box. And then the offering taken, here I'll check that box. Let's see, let me also put a demo here off to the worship. I'm going to need to find that a little bit later on. Okay, so I want to update that. I'm going to go ahead and click add. So now you'll see, let's go back to our current month where we can see the labels a little bit better. There is on the 13th coming up this week would be an off week, so it's just worship. And then we've got a worship with communion, and then worship again and worship with communion. You can see that it does put a little 8A for 8 a.m. because of the hours that I chose in the event itself. And so you don't have to type that into the event name. Like let's click on the 13th here next week. It opens it up for editing, and you see that there's not any 8A here in my label in the event name. It's just picking up the 8 a.m. from my time slot here that I specified. Let me also real quick with this worship and communion event. Let me abbreviate this a little bit. Because as we talked about calendars before and how sometimes the calendars can be a little bit skewed because of all the data that's in a specific date, it might be a good idea to edit or abbreviate, I should say, where you can, just to keep things a little bit more concise in that calendar printing view that we had. Let me update this existing sequence. And then this is something that will show if you're editing or updating an event that already exists and you just made a change, now it's going to give you the option to update only this one event, which might be good if you're maybe changing the time of a business meeting for just one particular week. You can also update all the events in the schedule, which is what I want to do for this particular scenario. Or you can update all the future events in this schedule. So if maybe your church services were maybe an evening service, a Saturday night service was going to change, or maybe a midweek service was going to change because the summer hours and you were going to start at a later point in time, you could then change it just for the future events. And it would only update those specific events. But I want to update this for all events in the schedule. Save that. And so now you'll see here in June, as well as if we went back to January where we started this series of worship services, it's just every other week is, or every first and third will have communion, every second and fourth would have worship without communion. Here in January, there was a fifth Sunday, so you can see here on the 31st, it does show worship with communion, so that gave us that month. Let's go to February. February starts here, it's worship and communion, worship with communion, worship. And then the next, since this wasn't a month with 5, it's 2 worship service. Well, let's see, now it continues on, that's right, with worship without and then worship with communion. So that's how you can create an event, and you would need to create 2 different types of event. One has communion, one does not, but it then is in your series that you've created. It does show just every week on our calendar, and we're done creating that event. Let's see, let me think of something here. Let's go back to last Thursday. I'm going to click on last Thursday. I'm going to use this in the demonstration a little bit later. And we're going to put a fellowship dinner last Thursday. We're going to attach it to the fellowship calendar, and it will be in the church basement. June 3rd, we'll say that it is at 5:30 p.m. and it will last maybe for an hour and a half. So we'll say 7. We could say that it repeats every single month on the first Thursday of every month. So we're going to have a fellowship dinner the first Thursday of every month. And all I want to do is take attendance. I do want it to show up in my attendance entry area, so I do want to put that check mark there. Click add. All right, so I've created that event, but we don't see it on the calendar. And what you then would have to think about, it's not that the application did something wrong, it's that we don't have the fellowship calendar checked off to display. So I'm going to go ahead and click the fellowship calendar, and there is our fellowship dinner on the 3rd, and then the first Thursday of July. It shows up again, and it will then show up from that point forward. Now, since I started that on June 3rd, I think if we go back here to May, it's not going to be here on the first Thursday because I started this series on the 3rd of May, but it will appear. If I go, here's July, there's August, so it goes on from there. Let's go back to the current month, June. Now we can talk about, let's see, we talked about adding events, editing events. You know, this might be a good spot right before we get into recording attendance to take our intermission, our break. We're about a little bit less than 45 minutes into this. So let's go ahead and take our break here. Let me get our intermission slide up, and I will see you back here in about 5 minutes. Go ahead and stretch your legs if you'd like. Grab a drink of water, and we'll be back here momentarily. Thank you. All right, we're back after our 5-minute break. Let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. I wanted to go ahead and get into tracking attendance, but before I do, I did want to quickly just demonstrate a couple things here with editing events. I know we talked about it a little bit. Let me go forward in time to December. We're in December of 2021, and let's say that there is a worship event on the 12th of December that we've got so much snow that we canceled the service. So in this series of services, I can click on the event on the 12th, and there is a delete this event button here in the lower left corner. I can click that button, and this is where you can choose just to delete one event or all of the events within this schedule. So in the case of, inclement weather, you would just want to select that one event. I can click delete, and that event now is removed from that series and removed from the calendar as well. So that way you can kind of stay on top of those events that get canceled for some reason or another. You can also apply that same kind of idea to other meetings that happen during the week, or maybe there's Bible classes or Bible studies, book studies that your church may create events for that happened on every Tuesday or Tuesday mornings, etc. And or if there was a fellowship dinner that let's say we had here in October, the fellowship dinner on the 7th was going to be deleted, we could just go ahead and delete that one event as well, just to remove it from that particular month. If there was a time, let's just use a fellowship dinner for September, let's go back a month and say that, actually, let's say in summer, in August. We're in August here on the 5th, and I want to change the time of this. We can go ahead and change it from 5:30. We have to start it later than that. We have to start it at 6 instead of 5:30. So we make the change for this one event. It does keep the interval of an hour and a half that I originally had. So it's showing now that it goes until 7:30. I can go ahead and save this change. And again, I've got that same type of application here where I can update only this one event with a time change on my calendar. That's what I want to do here. We save that. Now you see that here on August 7th, the fellowship dinner is being delayed by a half an hour starting at 6 p.m., but the event following in the next month is going to be 5:30 p.m. again. So you can edit those start times, end times, things like that at any point. All right, so now we want to get into tracking attendance. We've got a lot of material to cover, so let's jump right in. We're going to go to the attendance view for that. All right, so here in attendance view, let's talk about just the navigation here on the screen. First of all, you'll see in the upper left corner the heading for attendance. Right next to it is an enter attendance button. We'll click on that in order to enter attendance. But what we see here on the screen is a particular time frame in the upper left corner. That can be changed just by clicking on the text of the time frame. And then you've got a pop-up calendar for the first date here. If I use my mouse, click on the second date, you've got another calendar. So you can change the start and stop times of that time frame. Whatever time frame you choose is what will be displayed on the lower half of the screen. The option here to include those who didn't attend, you can choose to put that on there if you want. What that would then show would be those people in your church that have not attended as well. But in most cases, you're mostly interested in those who are frequently attending your events, and so you might want that checkbox unchecked. Underneath that, we have a timeline, and you'll see that this timeline can be shifted. Going back in history, we could click on this and continue to click on it. If I hover over my cursor over one of these bars on the timeline, it's showing that I'm in the 2017 year. If I use the bracketed arrow here on the far right of the timeline, I can go back into the future and into the time frame that I've selected. And you'll see here that the time frame has a little handle on the right as well as a handle on the left, which represents that same time frame that I have here. I can drag these handles out. Let's say I'm here on July 1st. I'm going to click on it and drag this handle. As I drag, you can see the date changing underneath the handle. And I want to put this to June 1st. One more month in my timeline. And now that I release my mouse, the bracket gets put there, and my time or my date range here in the upper left corner has adjusted as well. So the text here in the upper right corner and those pop-up calendars are in sync with the handles that are here on the timeline as well. The beauty of that is, let's say that I wanted to look at just a month of data. We've got December 31st. So let me drag this out to the 1st of December. So right now I've got just 1 month. It shows now up here as well, December 1st through 31st of 2020. I've got a month here. I can slide these handles out and back in independently, but I can also click in the middle of this time frame on the timeline. I'm going to left click right now and hold my mouse button down, and I can just move this 31-day period to somewhere else on the calendar. So if I move it here to August 1st through August 31st and release my mouse, then that's what's appearing here in the results at the bottom of the screen, showing attendance during that time frame. But I want to go back to, and sometimes I use the pop-up calendar because I can just be a little bit more exact. I would just want to go back to the last 6 months of the year, so July 1st through December 31st. That's where a lot of my attendance history is showing here on the timeline. I haven't really updated things for 2021 yet, so just work with me here. All right, so we are starting July 1st. We've got a 6-month period on the display. What shows then on the screen is those 6 months. Every little mark here that's in teal will show a different date that that particular person, Dave Abbott, had attended an event. And it shows that during this 6-month period, that the last date that he attended during that period was December 27th. This last date is not referring to the last date that he's attended a church service at your church. It's the last date he attended for the time frame that you've selected. The same goes for the percentage of his attendance during that time frame. So if you've got a half a year on the display, like I've got 6 months, that's going to be roughly 26 weekends. So in this case, we can see here from the total column, which is also displaying the number of times he attended during the time frame selected. He attended 24 times, and if this is half a year, most likely it's 26 weekends, then that is he attended 24 times out of 26 available times. That's why his percentage is 88.9. Some of these other people who maybe attended 6 times out of the 26 weeks, that brings them down to a 22.2% attendance rate for that time frame. You'll also see then there's a change of color on the screen. Some people have a green background, some have a pink background. And the reason for that change in color is everyone who has attendance during this time frame that's over 50%, their background is going to be green, and it will get a little bit of a darker green as they get closer to 100%. So you can see here that this Deidre Barber compared to Shirley Alexander, who, if I use my mouse over here, you can see 96.3 and 85.2, but let me move my mouse. You can see that Deidre has just a slightly darker green row than the one above of Shirley. The same thing goes then for those that have pink background. The pink designates that they have under 50% attendance. So as they get closer to 0, the pink background will get darker. So right here, the 11.1% as compared to 22 or 29, those shades of pink are getting a little darker. So visually, as you're looking at this attendance window, just the attendance history, you can right away pick out those people who aren't attending quite as often, and then you'll see their names, and it might be somebody you want to reach out to and see if there's something going on in their life, whatever the case may be. But that's just there to help you just analyze your church's attendance. So that's what shows here on the bottom half in the upper right corner. You would be able to export this information out to a spreadsheet, and it would have a column for every date where there is attendance. If we have time, I might show that to you in a bit, but we need to keep moving. Here in this print option in the upper right corner, you'd be able to also print this particular view, and it does include the graph. So once again, in the upper right corner, we might want to go to landscape, which opens up the graph a little bit more and gives you a graphical representation of their attendance. This might be, this view of printing might be a good view for a report that you might give to your elders who maybe visit certain households. They're responsible for certain households. You could create a smart group filter. We kind of talked about filtering, where you might have a filter for each elder, and you'd be able just to have their people displayed here on the screen, and then print that out for them and forward them that report in a PDF form. Compare would be a type of report, and save report, this would be a particular view. We talked about views yesterday. You could, if this was a view that you would want to see from time to time, you might just save it as a saved report view, and you could then return to it consistently by going to the reports menu. That will be covered in more detail during the reports webinar next week. The other selections that we have are, right now we're viewing the attendance of everyone. Maybe you're just interested in the attendance of your members, so you can choose a particular smart group for that and just see those people. Here we've got the calendar selection. So right now it is showing all calendars. If I were to remove them all, we wouldn't see any attendance. If I would just choose my calendar from today, we still wouldn't see any attendance because we haven't added any. But some of these other options that are there from previous trainings and things, I could add the worship calendar, and that's where most of the data is that I've got here on the screen at the moment. So I'll keep that on the screen. Well, actually, I'll just choose all. And then here is also a column selector. So here in attendance view, the most often columns that you might find helpful would be to show the graph. That's our visual representation there. The last date that they attended in the time frame that the date range you've selected, the percentage of attendance during that date range, as well as the total. But you could then add any additional information. You could add the address of each individual person, maybe their age, some of this other information. I don't know if that would be helpful necessarily. You could add email address, but that's sporadic in this database. You might add phone numbers, which puts them all right here. And a view like this, again, would be a nice view to give to make part of that elder report that you give to your elders if they're responsible for certain households. Because once this shows up and we go to landscape view, the elder would then have the address that he would need to drive to visit the family. He would then have a little graphical representation of their attendance, when the last date they attended, their percent, as well as the phone numbers, so he could then call them as he's en route and saying, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And so this is all bringing together the information that an elder or a pastor might find helpful as he's driving around your city visiting folks. So keep that in mind, that's an option here. Let's now get into the actual entry of attendance. We're going to click on this Enter Attendance button. All right, so I want to direct your attention first to the column on the right. The column on the right is the events that have been checked off as being able to record attendance to. And that's where those check marks that we talked about here under the creating an event comes into play. The event had to have a check mark there for attendance taken for it to even appear in this column. And this is just a scrollable column descending back in order through the months, the previous months, May 21, 2021, etc. So there's a lot of events here that are coming in from some of my other calendars that I have displayed, but I'm mainly interested in the ones that we created, the events that we created today with the word demo in parentheses, as well as the fellowship dinner here that I created on the 3rd. But let me go back, let's say, to the month of May. You'll see the date of the month of May. I just want to go maybe to the second week in May here. I'm looking for a demo here, May 9th. That was the second weekend in May with just a standard worship service. I'm going to go ahead and click on that event here in the far right column. I select that event. It then shows that my worship event from Sunday, May 9th is on the screen, 8 o'clock service. And this is currently showing everyone, drawing from what we learned yesterday in filtering, everyone in the database. And so there's 248 people that I would need to scroll through to track attendance. And attendance can be taken just as easy as clicking on a name. Dave and Sue attended. That peach background shows that they attended. If you made a mistake, just click on the name again and it removes that mark of attendance. In this case, I do want to mark all of those as attending. Maybe David and Shirley attended, Deidre, Tim, I attended. There we go. And Julie, Rick, and Claire. So it's just clicking on a name or clicking a second time to remove it to get attendance taken. You can see as I'm clicking on these names that in the lower left corner, there is a subtotal of those who attended. 11 I've clicked on so far. And so as I click on some more people, that number just continues to raise. You'll also see here in the lower right corner, let me click on a name here in just a moment, but kind of focus your eyes here in the right corner. As I click on a name, a brief little green tag or flag shows up saying saved. So this is saving your attendance as we go. There's no need to post a batch. It's just dynamically saving every click that you do. Even if you uncheck a name, like I'll uncheck Michelle, that flag will then appear and say that uncheck has been saved. So it's just saving as you go along, every action that you take. Now that would be, if you have a lot of people attending a church service, it would be a lot of clicks to click on each of these individual names, and that's crazy. So what we've done is created a shortcut where you can click just on the family name here in the front, and it then assumes that you want the whole family, all 4 having attended. The Claytons here, family of 5, clicking on their last name, all 5 have attended. What you could do then, just even to save time, let's go down here to the Collins. Let's say 3 of the 4 attended. Go ahead and click the Collins last name and then unclick Kelly because she didn't attend. That's 2 clicks instead of having to do 3. I'm just looking for anything that's going to save me time in entering attendance. So let's go ahead and I'm going to click a lot of families here just to get some numbers that are higher as a subtotal. We'll click a few individuals. There we go. That's good. 62 people attended my worship service on the 9th of May. I'll scroll back here to the top. Without having to scroll, I could go ahead and type in a last name like Vasquez here, V-A-Z, and I could then click that Julian and Blanca attended. I could also begin to type in the last name Martin, and even as I'm just typing a partial part of their name, I already begin to see the Martins, so I can go ahead and make those marks for attendance. So you can search by last name. I could choose to search by first name and just say Mary Howard, and she attended. I could also do that with gentlemen, I could do Mike, etc. So use the type to filter, as we learned yesterday, to your advantage. There also is the ability to, instead of choosing everyone, which is 248 people, you'd have to scroll through. Most likely it's going to be your members that attend on a weekly basis. So maybe you only want this list showing at the bottom to be the 197 members that you have. And then that way, the majority of the names that normally attend would be there. So that's a way of kind of cutting down on things as well. Let me go back to everyone though. And then that, let's say this 69 group of 69 people is done. My attendance is taken. You can see now that since there are some marks of attendance here on the column on the right, there's a little black box with a check mark in it, meaning that attendance is taken for this event, or it just shows that some sort of attendance was taken. Let's say that I've attended, or I've recorded all of these names for attendance, and suddenly I realized, oh, I put it on May 9th and it should be on May 23rd. This is wrong. This is a wrong date. Your question might be, do I need then to clear and delete all of this attendance? In the lower right corner, there's a clear button, and start over on the 23rd? No, that's not needed. Next to the clear button is a transfer button. So let me show how that works. Once again, we're here on the 9th of May with having tracked or recorded all of the attendance. I click the transfer button. This then is telling me just to pick an event in the column on the right of where I want to transfer this attendance to. So most likely you would want to find a event that is a similar event, another worship event without communion. I would then scroll up to the 23rd of May. Here is my just plain worship service, the every other week option. And I want to move all of that, those 69 people attended to this event. I click on this event on the right side, and now it says attendance transferred successfully. The black mark now shows here on the 23rd, and the same 69 people now have been transferred. So if I go scroll down back to the 9th, and let's see my demo service here on the 9th, here it is. You can see the black check mark is no longer there, and so that attendance has been moved. So there's no need to delete a group of attendance if you made a mistake. Just transfer it to the day that you need to. All right, let's go to one of my communion events next. We'll go from the 9th, and let's see, 7 days later would be the 16th. So the 16th of May is another event, but this is a worship with communion event. Let's go ahead and click on that event. The left side of the screen then adjusts appropriately to that event, worship with communion on Sunday, May 16th. I can search again to type to filter to get certain families' attendance. And now you'll notice that on every person's name or every person's tag, there's now a little chalice. That chalice then designates whether they took communion or not. So if we say that Dave and Sue attended and they also took communion, you click on the chalice, and that chalice turns into a darker peachy orange color. If you made a mistake, click on it again and it removes that colored background to the chalice. Some people may have came, but they didn't take communion, so don't click on their chalice. Other ones, you can click on their chalice that they took communion. Now, obviously, I'm clicking on the name and then the chalice to show that they've attended both communion as well as attended the service. But what you can do is just click on the chalice itself. It's going to assume that they attended. That's obvious. So really, in this case, for communion services, just click on the chalice if they took communion, and if there's younger children that can't, but they attended, just click on their names to bring that designation about. So you can see here already with some of these names that I've selected, that in the lower left corner now we see that 14 people have attended and 8 of those 14 have communed. So we do have a subtotal for the communed as well. Another shortcut that we give you, besides just clicking on the family name, showing that they all attended, you can also click on the chalice as well in the family column, and that will show everybody attended as well as everybody communed. So this could be advantageous for you to get things done real quick. In the case where maybe there's 2 young children who don't take communion, it still would be worthwhile to click the family chalice and then remove the chalice mark from the 2 children. Make sure that you're not clicking on their name, removing that attendance, but that you're just clicking on the chalice. And then that way you get it done in basically 3 clicks. We can go ahead and I'll just select random families here just to bring the numbers up. All right, that looks good. Well, let's get a few here at the end of the alphabet as well. Some larger families. All right, so right now we've got 61 people attending, 32 of them communed. You'll also see to the right here that we do have an additional head count option. So for those people who might be visiting your church this particular week, we can put in a head count that the elder in the back of the church counted 8 additional visitors. So now over here on the right, it shows a total of 69. That would be 61 people attending your service as well as the 8 additional head count. 32 are still showing as communed. And that might be the extent of our attendance here for communion as well. Let me just get a few other marks here. There we go. All right, so let's say that now we are done with that event as well, and we move on to another event further on. Let me get to an event here like worship with communion. We could do a transfer. You can also, let me just show the clear button. You can have a bunch of attendance created here, and then you find out, I can't get done with this at my desk at the moment. I'm just going to start over and do it tomorrow. You can click clear, and that removes all the attendance from this event. It does ask you to confirm that. You'll notice here on the right side, there is a black check mark currently there, but once I do clear, that black check mark then is removed as well. So at any point in time, later on, if you find that you made a mistake and you need to correct some attendance that's been entered, we can click on that service, that event here on the far right that has the black check mark, the appropriate date, click on it, and just remove that Lena and Darren did not attend. And we just make that correction, takes 2 people off of our attendance from 69 back down to 67. Those were all saved with a little save flag as we went along, and that's all I need to do. Click on the event, make the correction, and then I can go somewhere else in the program or come back to attendance. In order to get that into that attendance entry view, you do need to click on the button, but then we'll be right back to where we were putting in that attendance. Let's say that we do have an event like the fellowship dinner. Let me click on that. And let's say that for this fellowship dinner, I'm not particularly concerned about the individuals who came, that Dave and Sue and Tim and Rick and those people came. I just want to enter in a head count. We do have an option here in the upper right corner for that. We can click that box just to provide a count for this event. And then in the lower right corner, we can enter in here that 125 people came to the event. We click save, and that attendance to that fellowship dinner now has been saved, just as with the figure of 125. And something like that might be handy if you are doing a fellowship dinner on a consistent basis. If you did one every month, you'd be able to see the varying attendance that you've had throughout the year. If it went into multiple years, you could see that sometimes maybe during the spring and summer, it goes up in attendance. And so you can use that then to help you decide how much food to buy, and you'd get some kind of idea of the pattern there for attendance. And that would all be able to, you'd be able to view that here in the attendance view. If we went here to attendance and chose to show just the fellowship calendar, let's see, we've got to move our timeline as well. Well, let me put the mark here on the right day. We're what, on June 10th? Refresh the page. Oh, that's right. In the, yeah, I'm sorry, the fellowship dinner, we just put in a head count. So I did want to point out that there are some disadvantages in doing a head count. You won't see the individuals, obviously, since we didn't select individuals. And so the head count, it would show up in trends, reports, and things that we'll go into in more detail during the reporting webinar. But for viewing just the attendance, you would have to have selected an event or a calendar of events where you have actually put selected people who attended. So right now, these are the two the two services that we had, worship services, where I did put in some attendance. Let's change the start date here to be somewhat in this area as well. So that's what we see. We see 3 weeks represented down here in the lower half, and those people that I just randomly checked off in attendance show up in this view for this time frame that we've selected. Let's see, what else do we want to cover yet in the remaining time? Oh, let's go back to enter attendance. And let's say that right now it still is that fellowship dinner that's selected. I'm going to go to one of my other options here. Let's go to a Sunday school class, maybe the last one that was done, Sunday school. So here we have a Sunday school event that was put on one of my calendars. And right now, this is showing 248 people. We already talked about selecting members, and I could find those individual children that attended. But what is really nice is being able to continue to use those filtering options that we talked about yesterday. You can create a smart group, and I've got one that was pre-built for my Sunday school class, just the first grade. When I click on that smart group, which has a light bulb icon here, it's just going to show me those 11 people, those 11 children that are in this first grade Sunday school class. So that's just a way of using filtering to your advantage. For this Sunday school class, I can then select those children that did attend. If I happen to have these 11 children that are part of families of members that come pretty regularly, instead of having to click on each one of these 11 names as I've gone through here, there is an option here at the bottom to select all. That will just do whatever group that you currently have filtered on the page. It's not going to do the 200 some other names. It's just those that are on the page itself. I did want to show also that we do have an option here into the download link. You can export this out to a spreadsheet file, but we also have an attendance sheet. So if we click attendance sheet, that can now be downloaded. Let's go ahead and open that attendance sheet up here in Word. And so let's see, in this, let me make one quick change here. This is an event that the way it was created was a single event. So let me go back to June 6th. In order to get to this, I'll have to put down the education calendar, remove some of my other calendars, and Sunday school, let's see, I wanted to go to the 6th. June 6th, Sunday school. Just going to attendance taken. I don't think I chose the right event here. So let's go back to the 6th. Going to probably be this 9:30 event. Yeah, this event was not a repeating event, so let me just quickly repeat it and update this schedule. All right, sorry about that. I want to get back to where I was. I needed to make this a repeating event here, the Sunday school event, to give you an example of this attendance sheet. As long as you have a series of events that will continue to happen from week to week, you then would get this type of attendance sheet. This is what I wanted to show. As long as it's a series of events and it's repeated week after week, you'll now be able to have, I think it's like 12 weeks into the future on this little checklist. You could print this attendance sheet out, put it on a clipboard, give it to the teacher of the first grade class, and they could then use the sheet of paper to take attendance for every week, and then they'd return this piece of paper back to the church office, who could then enter in the attendance. So it's just a nice little report that you can export out from the attendance sheet option. And again, that was here under download, attendance sheet. Make sure that it's a repeating event, part of a series, and then you'd have those check boxes for the future weeks. All right, let's jump here in the remaining time. I need to show you the attendance detail report as well. So I'm going to just jump to reports, go to attendance detail. And basically what that attendance detail report does is it takes us right back to the attendance view, but it might have, it has a few things pre-configured for us already. So it's already showing us the name column, the graph, once again, the last date, percent, and total columns. Those are most frequently used. Here, we'll go ahead and just drag our brackets here, the date range, into just be those months that I recorded attendance here for. This is showing us the calendars, all calendars. So this is including the 2 events from Tim's worship, or Tim's demo, as well as the 1 Sunday school class I just put in as well. So that's the little bar we see here. So this is showing the attendance of those individuals. We could choose to print this out as a report, and it would show us in landscape view that graph. I don't necessarily need the address and phone numbers. Let's go ahead and remove that. Oh, you know what? That was there from the last time. Let's go ahead and refresh this page. Sometimes if a column shows up in a printed report that may not be part of what you have displayed on the screen, it might be your internet cache that's holding on to it. So sometimes refreshing the screen should correct that problem. Let's take a look at this again, and the address should hopefully be gone, as well as the phone numbers. No, it is not, so it's still there. All right, I'll talk to the programming team about that. I don't think that should be the case because we don't have those columns selected here of address and phone number, and they are not displayed. So we'll get that fixed, but you get the idea. You'd be able to print what is there on your display for the time period that you have selected. And let's see, just once again, what's showing the last date will be for the time frame that you have. So the last date attended between May and June 10th. The percent is going to be the percentage from the time frame that you've selected, as well as whatever calendars you've selected. If the, unchecking and checking this education calendar did change some of the percentages that we saw here a moment ago. And so as we check off and remove some calendars, your last date and your percent might change as well, because it was including the attendance from those events, from those calendars as well. So keep that in mind. If things look a little bit off to you, go ahead and think through, well, let me check my calendars that I've selected. Let me check the columns I've selected. Let me also check my time frame, things like that. All right, we're right at 11:30. Let's go ahead and jump to our quiz. It's just a short 5-minute quiz, and then we'll do some question and answer period, cover the questions that have been sent in. So let's see, let's go back to our PowerPoint. This is our quiz. It's just a short 5 questions. We did this yesterday as well, and we don't know who answers how, so don't worry about it. Just make your best guess on some of these questions. The first question is a true or false question. The anniversary calendars create events from the data that is in your people records, the existing data in your people records. Let's go ahead and let me launch that particular question here so that you see it on your side. So go ahead and either click on true or false with your mouse, and we'll see how well we did. All right, let's see. Can we get a few more of you who are clicking on those? So let's try to get as many answering as possible. Any more? I'm just about ready to close the voting. All right, let's go ahead and close. We'll share the results. So we do have a lot of people selecting true and some selecting false. So the answer then to that is, the answer is true. The anniversary calendars are calendars that are based upon the data within the person records of your Church360 member site. This means that it will include baptisms, birthdays, deaths, confirmations, and wedding anniversaries. Those calendars all are based on that information already there. You don't have to create them. All you need to do is make sure that baptism dates are put in on your people records, birth dates are put in there, any confirmation and wedding dates, and those names will then appear in your events view for that calendar. All right, let's move on. Next question, it's a multiple choice. If you want an event to repeat on the 1st, the 3rd, and 5th Sundays of the month, you should set your event to repeat. Is it by the weekly setting, the monthly setting, or the annual setting? All right, make your selection there of either weekly, monthly, or annually. Remember, I don't know who chose what options, so don't worry about it. Just use your gut, go with what you think it is. All right, any more takers? All right, very good. We've got about the same percentage answering this time as well. Let's go ahead and close the poll, share the results. So this one's interesting because we've got it kind of spread out among all 3 answers, weekly, monthly, and annually. So let's go ahead and see what the answer is. So the answer is monthly. Using this option allows you to pick either specific individual days to repeat, such as repeating on the 10th day of the month, or the way we used it in the demonstration this morning was to pick specific days of the week in a month, such as you want to repeat it on the 1st and the 3rd Sunday of the month to get that communion service in there, and the 2nd and the 4th to get just the plain worship service without communion. So we used the monthly option there, and the majority of you selected that, so very good. Let's go ahead and do the next true or false. Once attendance is recorded, the attendance data cannot be changed. Think about that and record your answers. Once attendance is recorded, the attendance data cannot be changed. All right, everybody responded quickly to that one. So we covered that one well, share the results, and 100% false. So that is correct. Attendance can be changed at any time. To change the attendance records, you just click on the attendance view in the menu bar. Then you click on that enter attendance button. That will get you into the attendance entry screen. And then you select the desired event on the right-hand side in that column. And then you're able to make any change, uncheck a name that you've checked, or if someone needed to be added, just click on their name and it will edit that attendance for the day. Very good. Let's go on to the next question. True or false, if attendance is recorded on the wrong event, it is necessary to delete all the attendance data that you just put in and start over on the new date. All right, log your answer in there. Let's see if we can get a good response here. Any other takers? The last moment. All right, let's close it. Show the results. Very good. You 100% chose false. So the answer to that agrees with you. If you accidentally record attendance on the wrong day, use the transfer button to transfer the attendance to the correct day. And then the last question. This one might be, you might have to give it a little thought, but true or false, on the attendance detail report, what we just were showing here at the end, the percentage of the attendance is determined by seeing how many weeks a person attended an event on the selected calendar, and you divide that by the total number of weeks in the selected date range. It's a lot of explanation for that. I couldn't put all that text on your side of the screen there, but again, in the attendance detailed report, on the report, the percentage of attendance is determined by how many weeks they attended divided by the number of weeks in the selected time frame or date range. All right, let's see. I think everyone has voted. All right, every 100% of you answered true. And the answer to that is true. You are correct. The percentage figure on the attendance daily detailed report represents the percentage of weeks a person attended for the date range selected, as well as the calendars selected. So in other words, if they attended 5 times in a 25-week period, which is roughly about 6 months, 26 weeks in a 6-month period, that would be an even 20% attendance rate, 5 divided by 25. All right, very good. Now is the time. If you have any other questions, go ahead and enter them into your questions window. A number of questions have come through, so I'll address those in just a moment. In the meantime, I do want to thank you. If some of you just need to get going, that's fine, but I want to thank you for attending today. And for those of you who are with me live, thank you very much for spending this hour and a half with me. And for those of you who are watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording as well on our website. Hope that this training was beneficial to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the number provided there on your screen, 1-800-346-6120. That comes into our support department. And then our support department email address is support@cts.cph.org. All right, let's look at some of the questions that came through. Are deleted events captured someplace for review? Mark asks. No, they aren't. When you're deleting an event, it does throw up a notification window saying that you're about ready to delete an event with attendance. In fact, let's see, I think we can go to, let's go back here to an attendance event. Attendance view, enter attendance button. Let's go to Sunday school events since it's here with the black check mark. And, oh, I'm sorry, let's go to the events view for that. The 6th, it was this particular week. We delete this event. This is what it will show you, Mark. Delete only this event. Attendance has been recorded for this event. If you delete it, that attendance will also be deleted. So it does warn you of the fact if you are on your church calendar and you choose to delete an event that has attendance associated with it. All right, the next question, will we ever get a column that will show last time they communed? Very good question, Ruth Ann. That has been requested quite a bit, and a lot of feedback has been taken. Nothing has been added yet at this time, but I know it is a very popular piece of feedback. So I would think, and this is just me, I would think that they would be looking at that here in the future on the roadmap as something that they might add. Although I'm not in those meetings to know even if it's in progress yet or not. So we'll just have to see. But thank you for asking the question, because it's good to know that and get all of the feedback from you as customers what you need. Also, it would be helpful to have the very last date a person attended even outside the time frames selected, Ruth Ann asks. And I believe you can get that information just by going to People View and go to a person's record. It should show in their record the last time they attended, and this is throughout the whole database, not just for the time frame like we were showing on that one report, but this does show the last date that this individual has attended your church. So that is met there. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, Janet, you asked, my list of members now somehow has a new member and the last name starts in G. How can I correct that? All right, this is a little bit of what we covered yesterday, but I will certainly be glad to answer your question. If you needed to make a correction to a name, you would come to the person's record here and you would come up to the upper left corner. Dave Abbott's name is here. Just click on the text and it reveals those edit fields for you to make that change. So if there was a last name that just had G, just go ahead and correct that here. If it was a matter of changing the preferred name from Dave to something else, obviously here, legal name is David. The difference between legal and preferred in a lot of cases, what will be shown in the program is the preferred name. So it would always say Dave Abbott. But then on those types of things where like legal documents in a way are given like a contribution statement, there it would say David Abbott, where it's a little bit more of a form that the legal name should appear on. So that's where you make that change after you've typed in to those text entry fields. Just click somewhere away from those fields and the change then will appear. Mark asks, can attendance be taken by a kiosk at the front door? It certainly could. I don't think I'd necessarily open that up to your members to do the attendance. Let's see here. You might want to have a staff member standing there just to help out, because if they have access to putting in, if that little kiosk has access to put in data through here, then there may be possibilities of being able to access other areas of the program. You'd have to be careful with that. I'd want to think through that a little bit more. I mean, you might be able to create a user that just has access to the attendance view. But then you wouldn't want it to leave it unattended, because somebody, as we talked about, you can just click on a name and it removes the attendance. And if some young child just wants to get click happy and starts clicking on there when the parents look away, that could be a problem. So, but you can do that at a kiosk at the front door. Ruth Ann asked, is there a way to not have a chalice show on those who are not confirmed? Not at this point, Ruth Ann. That is an interesting question. At this point, if we have a communion service, the chalice is going to be an option. That is there for all names. That would require some change in programming, some change in thought. So that's some good feedback. I'll go ahead and enter that in as feedback today. But at this point in time, that option would not be available. But thank you for asking that. That's a good idea. All right, and Dewey asks, what does the CSV stand for? A spreadsheet of some kind. And so yes, here in the export option, there's a CSV and an Excel file. Both of these really are spreadsheets of some sort. Obviously, Excel is a spreadsheet. What CSV stands for is comma separated variable. And so some of those CSV files, I think, can be a text file, and every value in a column would just be separated by a comma instead of like a spreadsheet line. But most of the time, CSV files are read by Microsoft Excel, so it just automatically opens up that file in a spreadsheet type of format. And normally CSVs just don't allow or don't have any formatting in them. So an Excel spreadsheet, you can really make it pretty, add color, do all kinds of formatting with it, but a CSV is more just straight data. And a lot of times other applications will import data in to their application, but it needs to be in a CSV file, meaning there's no formatting applied. So that's why we make that as an option. Hopefully that helps give some clarity to that for you, Dewey. Thanks for asking the question. All right, that's it for the questions that came through the Q&A session. So once again, just thank you for attending today's webinar, and we look forward to some sessions still coming up on offerings and reports and system administration yet. So stay tuned. We look forward to seeing you maybe next week. And in the meantime, you have a great day. Thanks again.